Every day, first responders confront unimaginable challenges to protect and serve. But behind their steadfast bravery lies a silent battle with unresolved trauma, a struggle that often remains hidden. What happens when the protectors of our safety are left to face their pain alone? Today's episode, Understanding the Hidden Costs of Unresolved Trauma, takes a deep dive into the emotional and psychological burdens carried by those who put their lives on the front line for us every day. Well, their courage is unwavering. Many first responders endure anxiety, depression, and emotional numbness after our long shifts. Now, these unresolved traumas not only strain personal relationships and mental health, but also take a toll on professional performance and physical well-being. But in this episode, I want to explore the powerful mind-body connection, examining through how the toughing it out mindset does more harm than good. And I want to introduce some practical strategies like reflection journaling to build resilience and recovery. So whether you're a first responder, a loved one, or even an advocate for mental health, this episode is going to offer some crucial insights and tools to support the everyday heroes in our lives. So join me as I reveal those hidden costs of unresolved trauma and chart a path towards healing, strength, and hope. Welcome to Shields Down, Healing for First Responders, the podcast supporting those on the front lines as they navigate PTSD and trauma. Each episode brings stories of resilience, expert insights, and tools for recovery, offering hope and a path forward. So put your shield down, reclaim your strength, and remember, you're not alone. Unresolved trauma often manifests in heightened anxiety, depression, and irritability, which can lead to strained relationships, difficulty focusing on the job, and emotional numbness. Now, as first responders, we may feel that we need to tough it out, right? Not talk about, I got this. I can just push through. I'm fine. How many times have we heard that? But failing to address trauma can erode mental health over time, right? We all have this silent struggle, that emotional burden of unresolved trauma. Now, as first responders, we often are faced with those times that it's an unspoken expectation to push through those traumatic experiences, right? I know that when I go through an experience at work, we have something called CISM, which is the Critical Incident Stress Management Team. Now, they'll be called in to assist if there's any type of incident, but some people are truly genuine, and it's honoring to have those people come and talk to me after an incident, but some people are not. Like, I feel that it's just a ticky box, just to kind of move me on and say, yep, I offered it to him, didn't take it, he's fine. But when trauma remains unaddressed, it often surfaces as persistent anxiety, irritability, mood swings, right? These emotional symptoms are going to strain relationship with loved ones, and it's going to make it difficult to express feelings or connect on a deeper level. Over time, the emotional burden can lead to burnout, can lead to emotional exhaustion, and even detachment from the job. So addressing these emotions early is crucial in preventing long-term emotional fallout. We want to work towards becoming that person that we're trying to get back to, right? Trying to move forward to is what actually I mean. Because the impact of on our mental health, right? Trauma evolves into psychological distress. Now, what do I mean by that? Unresolved trauma doesn't just fade away, right? Just because we're not focused on it doesn't mean it's not there, because it can really grow into a deeper mental health challenges. Without proper care, as first responders, we may develop chronic issues like depression, panic attacks, or even ultimately post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the psychological toll often shows up as an inability to focus, decision-making problems, or even hyper-vigilance, which are really crucial in high stress jobs like law enforcement or emergency services or the first responder type role that you're in. So ignoring the mental health effects of trauma can really make these psychological symptoms harder to manage. It can reduce the capacity to perform effectively on the job, and it can really increase those mental health risks long term. Now, the myth of toughness, right? That myth of why toughing it out can really be harmful, right? There's a pervasive belief in many first responders and in the communities that showing vulnerability is such a sign of weakness. This mindset really encourages many to kind of tough it out, to ignore the trauma that they've endured, not face those emotional times. However, this approach can have dramatic effects, as unresolved trauma tends to compound over time, leading to emotional numbness and disconnection from both yourself and others. Right? I use an analogy sometimes that you take a rock, you put it in your backpack for every event that you've gone to, and over time you get weighed down and weighed down and weighed down, and you have to deal with that unresolved trauma, or it's just going to weigh you down, right? But most of us try to hide it, and we're walking slow, and we're so focused on this pain that's hurting our back that we can't concentrate, right? And then it causes us to be numb. And this emotional numbness can really make it harder to feel joy, love, empathy, and it'll lead to further isolation. So it's important to challenge the notion that seeking help or addressing trauma is a weakness, because in fact, it takes courage and it's a necessary step towards healing and remaining in control over your emotional and psychological well-being. Right? There's so many, even physical health consequences. Chronic exposure to trauma without adequate coping mechanisms is going to increase your stress level, which in turn can lead to physical health problems, right? Heart disease, high blood pressure, digestive issues, chronic pain. These all come from a body that's not in order because it's in dis-ease. Now, it's important to recognize that the mind and body connection and how unresolved trauma can manifest physically. Okay, so first let's understand the mind and body connection, right? The body responds to stress and trauma in ways that are often overlooked, especially for those constantly exposed to high stress environments like first responders, right? When the brain perceives a threat, it activates that fight or flight response, right? It floods the body with stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. And then while this response is going to be helpful because you need to deal with the problem, but chronic exposure to this can lead to prolonged stress hormone elevation, which negatively impacts your physical health. So recognizing how unresolved manifests, that trauma manifests in physical symptoms is the first step, right? When you understand that, it's like, yeah, you know what? I get this. My unresolved trauma is causing me more harm. And this is where you can begin to build that. Because mental and physical health are so deeply interconnected. Your mind and body are one, right? And when you're going after that, when you're successful and you understand that they are, this is when you're going to create that space in your life. Now, one of the most significant physical consequences of chronic stress and unresolved trauma is the toll it takes on your heart and your circulatory system, right? Prolonged exposure to stress can lead to high blood pressure. It can increase your heart rate and develop conditions like heart disease, right? This is because constant release of stress hormones such as cortisol can cause inflammation in your blood vessels and lead to arterial damage. So over time, these effects contribute to an increased risk of cardiovascular issues. And as first responders, we need to be aware that the risks of actively monitor our physical health while addressing our emotional well-being. It works with both. You have to look, it's like, you know, they say you can work out every day, but if you're not taking care of your mind too, you're missing a point, right? Trauma and chronic stress it's going to also affect your digestive and musculoskeletal systems. That's a tough word. For many of us, stress manifests as gastrointestinal issues like irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers, chronic indigestion, as the gut is often referred to as the second brain, right? Due to the sensitivity to stress, right? Because, I know that that's where I feel a lot of my stress. When I'm stressed and my stomach starts turning, I know that I need to kind of step back and go, okay, what's going on? Additionally, though, stress-induced muscle tension can also lead to chronic pain, right? Lower back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. Sometimes we think that we pulled something, but on the other hand, it could be the stress that you're holding within your body. And this is often exasperated by the physical demand natures that we do as first responders. So we take care of ourselves and we're like, okay, I'm going to work out in the gym more. Maybe I'll stretch more, things like that. But then we don't take care of our mind, which is actually the root cause of all this pain you're going through. Now, the last point I want to talk to you about before I get into the exercise is how unresolved trauma can really affect your decision making, your situational awareness, and your reactions during high stakes moments, leading sometimes to mistakes, overreacting in crucial situations. So addressing trauma is not just a personal need. It's also a professional responsibility to ensure that you perform on the job at your highest level. Right? The connection between trauma and cognitive functioning, right? What is cognitive functioning? It's things like memory, concentration, problem-solving skills. So in high-pressure situations like ours, the cognitive impairments are going to lead to hesitation, delayed decision-making, faulty judgment. And this can cause the difference between life and death. Right? Trauma may cause your mind to remain in a heightened state of alertness. And it's going to disrupt that ability to process calmly and rationally. Right? Hyper-vigilance. That's what that's called. Because you're always on the go. You're like, oh man, this is like the worst situation. You're so focused on fight or flight that you can't rationally deal with the situation. So when you begin to understand that this connection is essential, in recognizing how untreated trauma is going to compromise critical thinking and decision making on the job, right? When you begin to understand that, you can begin to work on it. What about emotional dysregulation and its impact on our reactions, right? This is particularly in high stress situation, right? It's where a person may struggle to control your emotional response, right? That's emotional dysregulation. It's when you overreact or you underreact, right? You can overreact to minor stressors or a numbness to significant threats, or you can overreact to something that really isn't something that should be. So when you begin to address trauma, right, it's going to allow you to regain that emotional balance, ensuring that your reactions are appropriate and proportionate to the situation that you're going into. Trauma also affects not just the emotions, but our perception. Right? Our perception of what is risky, what is safe. And it's gonna skew that decision making. If you have unresolved trauma, you're gonna either become very cautious, hesitating in crucial moments, or you're gonna be impulsively taking unnecessary risks. Now, this imbalance can lead to poor decisions in those critical moments. So by addressing trauma, you're going to be able to adopt a trauma-informed approach to decision-making, where you can objectively assess the situation, respond based on facts rather than fear or emotional triggers. And this will ultimately improve your overall job performance and reduce risk. And my friends, that's the biggest thing. We want to get home to our families at the end of our shift, That's the number one goal. But we also want to get home mentally, not just physically, at the end of our shift. And that's why I do these, because I want to show you that mentally you can get home too. So here's the final exercise that I'm going to give you, and it's just a reflection journal. So get a notepad, go to the dollar store, wherever you want, just get a piece of paper, right? Take 10 to 15 minutes at the end of every shift and reflect on what are your emotions and your physical responses were that day, right? Answer questions like, what situations triggered my strong emotions today? How did I handle these feelings? Were the moments I felt, were they numb? Did I feel disconnected? And then where do I process these feelings in a healthy way? What are some of the things that I can do to process these emotional stressors? I worked with a guy and we were talking about mental health and mental toughness, and he told me the way he processes his feelings is he works out. He goes to the gym. Now this guy, very healthy looking dude, and he basically says, after an incident, I go work out for 45 minutes to an hour and just put my headphones down and just kind of go after it. And this is how he does it. So you got to find what works for you. For me, I journal. I walk and I journal. I pace. And that's how I deal with my emotions in a healthy way. Right? This little exercise is going to help you become more aware of your emotional state. It's going to help you track patterns of unresolved trauma, and it's going to take you the steps towards addressing those feelings before they come too big and overwhelming. So that's it for today. You know, it's clear that the hidden costs of unresolved trauma are profound and far-reaching, right? From emotional and psychological toll that strains your personal relationships and your mental health, to the actual physical health consequences that are threatening your well-being and that impact your professional performance. And it's going to lead to not affect your lives, but the safety of those around you. Trauma is a silent adversary that demands our attention. So make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure that you go after the goals that you're going after. Understand that no matter what is going on in your life, you are important and you need to take care of yourself first. Thank you for tuning in to Shields Down, Healing for First Responders. Remember, healing is a journey and each step forward matters. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories, insights, and tools for recovery. Together, we'll build a stronger, more resilient community. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and we'll see you on the next episode.